Hello, everyone, and happy Friday, and welcome to another exciting geez Louise, AdvisorShares AlphaNooner. Having trouble. It's getting hot out here. The
Easy for
market's
you to
getting to me
say.
already, apparently. But thanks for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. Today, of course, we're going to talk probably about the obvious of what's going on in the market, all this tariff chaos, and a bit of market pain to understate it. So good reminder, if you're out there, one, thanks for joining. We always really appreciate it. But two, of course, if you have any comments, you are always welcome to put them in the chat. We want to directly engage with you, answer questions, and have you join the conversation there. So good reminder, that's an option out there for you. I see Stevie in the comments there already. Great to see
Stevie,
you.
sorry I missed his spaces,
I
but I've
did
been moving
too.
around to various locations to get myself prepped for this, so I couldn't jump
It's
on
been
and join him.
busy, although it should be an interesting time because I think I missed it as well, unfortunately, but hopefully I can catch the replay. But another taste test review. I feel like that's where the top, that's exciting, right? To know. I feel like you probably do legitimately want to know people's taste test reviews because I think you buy a ton
See,
of,
I definitely
yeah,
do. Yeah.
you
Well, we were
just
just
put in
chatting
a
about buying
purchase.
the Curaleaf Energy one, and for the background information for people. So we bought Curaleaf before, and tasted it and everything. But they don't ship to Maryland. Apparently, Maryland, which is interesting. I don't want to get anyone in trouble here, but is it Wanderous? I think I've used their service that has Wana and a few other brands that they deliver hemp-based stuff. And they ship to Maryland, apparently. But Curaleaf doesn't. And then you looked it up, and apparently hemp is restricted in Maryland. So
Yeah, pretty strongly.
sorry, I don't know. But anyway, so the story behind that. So I'm ratting them out, I guess. Sorry, I'm snitching on them. But I have to ship it to your address. So DC is okay. And then I feel guilty having you mule my hemp-based drinks into the office, especially when I can just roll up to Trulieve in Rockville and get what's that brand? Is it Keith? I think that has some
Oh,
fantastic root beer and cola.
that's a solid one. I thought you were going to talk about Onward, their new launch that they have, because I think that is
And
like a
they
good
did
soda
ship
one.
to Maryland
Oh,
too, right? I think. Where did I
okay.
get that one? I think
Oh no. I
maybe I
will say
shipped it to. I don't know if I
it's
shipped it to
just
the
as
office or my house.
either way, it'd still be Maryland. I think it's just it's very illustrative of, I feel like, the confusion and sort of the disjointed rules and laws around cannabis and hemp and everything else. So it's getting worked out. But yeah, for
Oh,
now we
holy!
have kind of crazy workouts. What?
I've seen that Brain Dead. Um,
Mhm.
watched the Bloomberg radio thing.
Oh, nice. Love
I
to
was
see
on
it.
the other day. It was a quick one.
I
I
was
thought I
gonna
was going
say.
to have more time. I had more important points to make. In fact, just so you know, if you want the background, so you got to give the notes when the PR firm sets it up. And so I do a little research, figure out what I want to say. I knew it was general market commentary and obviously things about tariffs. And I thought with Bloomberg, when you're on like a Fox or something, even not Yahoo, well, yeah, or Charles Schwab is the
Yeah.
one I'm thinking of, even Yahoo, you typically can make 2 to 3 points and then you're out, right? That's all you get. So you try to keep your notes a bit focused on whatever it is that they want you to talk about or whatever. And I felt like I don't know if it's my experience or I know like when Dan's been on, so maybe that's the difference, right? I'm not Dan. They kind of have him on for a bit of a conversation. So in the notes, I had a couple different things that I wanted to cover. And as we went through it, a couple points, and then all right, thanks for being on. I was like, I got more points to make. And the point that I wanted to make, I think you and I have talked about this because we know some people that work with companies that are affected by these tariffs. And they pointed
Yeah.
out something pretty interesting to us, which was, people have had a sense since Trump has won that tariffs was going to be some component, right, of his administration. And as we've gotten closer to, what's happened now over the last couple of days, it's gotten pretty big, right? Those numbers and the crazy charts and all that other stuff. And I think I don't mean worse in a bad way, but just the surprise is that it's seemingly less about tariff rates and more about trade imbalance, right? Kind of reflecting both of those things. So bigger than I think we thought that it was going to be. But anyways, one of the things that he talked about that these companies that he works with were doing is they were shipping stuff in like crazy.
Oh,
So I
sweet.
won't specifically say what the industry was, but and they're finding storage places. And so I looked up storage stocks, like how they've been doing since November and since the beginning of the year. And I think since the beginning of the year, they were up anywhere from 4 to 6%. Now that's obviously probably changed in the last couple of days. And since November, like up 10 and 12%. Remember, that's a market year to date that's been, for the most part, flat to down, right? At least at the time, a few days ago. And so, I was like, oh, hey, if you're looking for a place to maybe invest, who might be doing well, it's all the people holding all the stuff that, they've been shipping in like
Yeah.
crazy to avoid the tariffs. So of course I don't take my own investment advice and buy any of those storage stocks, but yeah, I was going to make that point that I thought was a good one. Who knows what the performance of those stocks look like now after a pretty painful couple of days.
Yep.
But anyway, so thanks for watching, Brandon. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do think we'll definitely talk a little bit more and spend some time talking through kind of what areas could be worse affected than better. I think, just from looking at it, I think there's obviously sort of a punishing effect for tech in general, but we'll talk through that and, I think later on. But did want to just sort of get just starting with sort of high level on the tariff element. I think it is one of those things, like you're saying, where it was on the table to do tariffing, but I think the fact that it's really here, seeing what it
Is it
actually
an
looks like.
adjective now?
What did I say?
Tariffing?
Tariffing. I think they could verb it. Why not? I feel like that's not quite a thing, but bringing on the tariffs, whatever. Yeah, I think it's the balance also between, I think, what people believe is what will be short-term pain, because I think that was also kind of what the administration had flagged, or not flagged, but like telegraphed in terms of saying, hey, we're possibly going to go through short-term pain. So again, it's something that maybe could lift in the future. I think a lot of people are looking at how they're positioning of, is this a longer trend? Do I need to be more aggressive on hedging if that's kind of the approach I'm taking? Or is it one of those where you're just sort of enduring a reasonable, relatively healthy, I guess, drawdown, even though it's very painful, and kind of waiting it out
It's
and
kind
trying to
of you to
buy.
say healthy.
It's
I
painful.
would say
Well, so I feel like,
say reasonable reaction or semi-reasonable reaction, but yeah.
I think so.
And
Well,
the
so
funny thing is,
looking,
if like to me, bear markets, if our whatever government administration historically would let them happen, that is healthy, and we've had so few, right? The
yeah.
pandemic killed down like this, and then threw a bunch of money at it and straight back up. So ever since the financial crisis, right? That's been happening. So in some ways, with that term, like I'm with you. You need those healthy, natural ebbs and flows in the marketplace. This feels man-made.
I I agree. I think it feels painful. I think it's the all at once kind of nature element. That's part of it. Yeah, so I'll have to see. And then I guess so far we've seen in terms of reactions, China, I know they're putting on their own. So we have a sort of series of retaliations for
Yep.
tariffs. So I think I saw 34% for them. So that's interesting. We'll see how that plays out. Again, it feels like it could be very much still maybe negotiation and just sort of back and forth, and they're going to find some sort of happy ground in the middle.
Yep.
But it's hard to say.
And so I probably should know, but I don't know enough about what we shipped. I don't know what we shipped, at least from the US
To
to
them.
China, right? So you could say Nikes, but Nikes are made in Vietnam or wherever, and then going to China. So I'm not sure off the top of my head. I know exactly what we are shipping to China that we produce here, that they
They're
would be
pushing back.
tariffing in meaningful
Yeah.
size.
I am not sure either. I'd have to look it up. But I just think, yeah, you're right. I think, again, we're normally the bigger on the consumer side rather than on the production side,
Right.
which I
And
guess this
that's
is
where it's
ultimately trying to tie into.
strange. Yeah, that's where it's strange that they're going for the trade imbalance thing. And I should also say at a high level, like I do want actually free and fair trade, right? I actually wish everyone would just not have tariffs and
Mhm.
compete
Compete.
based on your efficiency and on the quality of your product. And certainly I wouldn't want government interference to help those, companies or whatever, right? Let them all sort of compete equally and fairly as best as we can. I know it won't be perfect. So I do want all of those things, but this idea that it's based on the trade imbalance seems off, right? I mean, we've got the biggest GDP on the planet. We consume a significant amount. We are very fortunate, to be in this country, even and Canadians. I know we have Canadians watching. They're a fantastic country and have a very, sizable themselves GDP. We're lucky and hardworking and all those things. It's not just luck, right? That gets you to those positions. And to expect a smaller country to buy as much of our stuff as we do of theirs doesn't entirely make sense to me. But we'll see how it goes.
That's fair. I was pulling it up because I was just curious based on your question,
Yeah.
because I also don't know what we export.
Did
So I
you
was
ask
looking at,
Rock?
I did not ask Grok, which I could have, but there's a uschina.org, which is the business council from 2023. They'd put out a report sponsored by Thermo Fisher Scientific, which is interesting. And it seems like in 2022, which again, that's kind of a harder time to gauge because I feel like that's still kind of in the pandemic effect, but
Yeah.
151 billion exports US goods to China. So
Did
some
it say
amount, I
what? Does it
guess.
say what though, roughly?
I
Or
think the breakdown seemed to be in surprisingly top one, oil seeds and grains, which is also interesting given the RFK appointment.
interesting. Yeah.
Semiconductors and components, oil and
That we
gas,
make here.
yeah,
Interesting.
and then pharmaceuticals and medicines is also a big one up there. So
Right.
interesting breakdown. We'll have to see. And again, I think part of it is figuring out what actually sticks. It seems like we're turning towards things are more likely to possibly stay in place, just because I think by actually putting it into place is a sign that they're moving that direction. But we'll see. Either way, market does not love it. I'd seen VIX finally up over 40 since last August.
And not a
Things are
bad
moving up.
couple of days though, if you have two short funds, which is a good quick
Yes.
reminder for me. I don't think I asked you pre-show. Are we tickering this or not tickering this?
Let's ticker it.
Oh,
Well, no, I think it's current. It's current. Let's try not to. I want,
so then
oh, what I
you
want
all
to.
know, or you can go to the website to
Yeah.
see our two short funds. But had
Uh,
a big day yesterday and a big day today. I think
of
the
course it
challenge
is.
with those things, right, and saying, "Oh, it's great that the performance was there." It's not like you expect someone's perfectly timing those things either. Though I guess we also did know what the day was when the tariffs were going to turn on. But
True.
I think even the funny thing is that's actually what I said on the Bloomberg interview was like, I'm not going to cash, right? And I'm not. I'm actually, I'm bit buying.
Mhm.
I have excess cash, right? So I'm not. I don't know that I'm ever been sort of fully invested, but the money that I want to take risk on, that's been fully invested. And then, take
Mhm.
a little bit at a time. And I believe in the Warren Buffett approach, at least in this instance, which is when things are incredibly difficult, you don't want to be the liquidity taker, meaning I need to give you this, please give me liquidity for my securities. You want to be the liquidity maker, I think, which again, that's for me, not for everybody else watching.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, you want to be the liquidity maker, meaning, oh yeah, I'll buy that from you if you want to get rid of it at 10% off. I'll buy
Discount.
that from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's
So
good.
I'm doing a little bit of that, a little bit at a time. I don't know that this is, resolving itself by tonight or tomorrow. And I could be wrong, and it can go another 50% down from here. We'll see
But shopping on sale, I think definitely important. And I think speaks to if you are
if it works for
managing.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's true. But I think it also speaks to, I think if you're managing your portfolio, not over managing, but just making sure you have sort of diversification, you're kind of managing, if you have some amount of cash, that can kind of help you over the long term versus, oh, interesting. Nice. Great to see. Brain dead. But yes, I would say also for looking at the shorts, because I know market timing can be tough. Like you said, we did technically have a date for when Liberation Day was.
Right.
Um, but looking at the year
And
even
we
so
didn't know it
far,
was being liberated from our assets, though. Like
I was
us.
going to say, what
Yeah.
has been your favorite? I feel like the internet has done the thing that it does best, which is finding humor in the tough times. Have you seen,
Yeah.
like, what's your favorite? Because I think I'd seen
I
one that
don't
was sort of
know.
same. Okay.
I
There
feel
was
like
one
I've
that was
seen
like,
just like a lot of anger and frustration, right?
oh, okay. Maybe I have seen that. And I think that is very valid, but I've seen ones that are more sort of saying, he's taking more of a Buddhist take when he's talking about liberation, and it's liberation from your material desires and wants and whatever.
That's a
So I
good
think,
one.
like,
I like
I
it.
think, yeah, I think it's, I think it's important to cope through. And I think it can help as much as humor can be silly or whatever, but I think it can
Right.
help you kind of keep a leveler head as you're going through. I was actually watching, Liz Ann Saunders had
Hmm.
a video that she had done, I think an interview, I want to say with Yahoo. And I think
She's
she was
smart.
talking, she's smart. And I think she did a
She's a
bit
smart lady.
about talking about like risk tolerance, which we talk about a lot, and, knowing your risk tolerance. But I think she was talking about knowing your risk tolerance on paper versus the emotional sort of
Mm,
risk tolerance element, where when you're actually in it, it feels very different. And I think for some amount of people who haven't really gone through true kind of turn downs. I think, I guess COVID though, that it came back so quickly that it's hard to tell, but I think it helps give you that gauge of how you actually feel during
right.
tougher times.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's
Yeah, it
amazing.
makes sense. And it's all just a
Mhm.
function of, how you want to invest. We talk about the way Dorsey Wright approaches things, right? Relative strength, trend following. So they'll move in and out of markets, but they've got a quantitative methodology for it. We've got some funds that are balanced, that they're still down, just not down as much. So that helps, right? You want to try to lose less if you can in these markets. And then outside of that, and I think I tweeted this yesterday, that I said if your alternative investment is down, it's not really an alternative investment. And in part because there's really only a couple sort of, in my mind, genuine alternative investments, right? Cash will do it. And
Mhm.
inverse. Even though you want gold to be a safe haven, even though you maybe want Bitcoin to be a safe haven, Bitcoin went down, right? Not probably, I don't remember if it was quite as much as the market. And
Mhm.
it's certainly nice that they maybe don't go down as much, right? So that's probably helpful. But when things get rough, if it's an asset, they have a tendency to highly correlate in those rough times. And the opposite, when things are really like shooting off and going well. So yeah, it's a good time to assess. Did you think you have something in your portfolio that you thought would react differently in this marketplace? And if it didn't, check it out, understand why. Maybe you keep it, maybe you don't.
Yeah.
Um, and it's, but it's still tough to time the market. Tough to time the market.
Yeah, that's true. And I think again, it's that divide between traders and investors. I feel like a lot of people, I don't know, think of themselves as investors sometimes, but are doing more of kind of a trader element where I think during these times it can be harder to kind of, I don't
Hard.
know, not
There's
make
no
those.
great answer. I was
Yeah,
looking
that's
at
great.
Braindead's comment too about looking at 401k statements, right? Because yeah, these jokes won't be as funny when I get that statement next month. Um, and I do wonder, right? I'm not sure that I give them credit for thinking through this in this way. But if you are getting your 401k statement, it was marked as of, March
March.
31st. So you're going to get that in a week and a half, and it won't have any of this on it. He's got a month to get it turned around
Mm-hmm.
before what will happen May 15th. So you have already paid your taxes, I guess. And then two, around May 15th, when you get that statement, if things haven't rebounded, people will be like, oh, this kind of sucks.
Yeah, I think the emotion of it definitely will seep in. But again, I think even a quarter, I mean, I guess I can make a difference over time, but
And if you believe good things happen long term as a result of this, you can weather a few months or a quarter or two.
yeah,
But that's the big unknown,
yeah,
is whether or not it all works.
I
I
think that
think,
is
and
true.
that's what they pointed out on the Bloomberg interview too. And I had talked about how you've had these companies announcing that they're going to move, certain amounts of manufacturing and investment, and they were like, "Well, that's announcements, right? Planned." And I was like, "Ah, that's a good point, right? It's all this has to follow through."
Yep.
Um, so
Yeah.
we'll be,
Well,
we'll all be watching.
I think I'd seen a stat somewhere that it was like the ultimate decision for a company moving their manufacturing to a different country or whatever is basically does it make sense over a 10-year period? So I do think they're looking at those much longer periods. And if those would stay in
Right,
place, obviously maybe a different administration, or at least
right.
hypothetically, not Trump again. Um, but I mean, could still be involved. So who knows?
And you just want to
But
know what the rules are, right? I was hearing them talk, I think it was on CNBC this morning, about, how companies had moved in the last Trump administration from, say, China to Thailand or China to Vietnam. And then now that doesn't even help you. Now, to be fair,
yes.
again, pre-announced, so they were going after everybody this time from a tariff perspective. So you knew it was coming, but you're not going to stop, sneaker manufacturing in 6 months there. So, how do these companies navigate it? I don't envy the position that they are in. Um, but it does
I
seem, moving some stuff to the US would be helpful. I saw Eddie's tweet about 100 million Americans not in the workforce. And I didn't dig through it enough to make sure that wasn't counting, 6 or 7 year olds or 90-year-olds. So I didn't know if it was working age workforce, because that's a third of
Mhm.
the US basically. Um, but it didn't say that those are people looking for jobs, per se either. But seemingly plenty of availability of a workforce ready and waiting for good jobs, or
I
even
think
just good.
for any jobs. Yeah, no, I think there
Yeah,
are some amount. I will say, just from looking at the jobs report, it did seem like obviously a little weaker than expected, only slightly. And I think a lot of that probably definitely coming from kind of the federal side of things, not adding well. I did see there was a good tweet on the restaurant. element kind of sticking strong. Again, we'll see how that actually works through as especially the tariffs kind of come into effect and if prices do increase. But yeah, there are people out there that definitely do want it. I am curious to see on the tariffing side and how the different companies kind of navigate through. I feel like more than moving their operations back home potentially, I feel like it's going to be looking for not loopholes, but different ways to basically, like, I don't know if you'd seen, they were talking for like Italy, which I don't think is obviously a major producer or like a manufacturing hub or anything like that. But I think Vatican City had not been taxed. So they were saying maybe you could route your shipping through there. Or I think Guadalupe in, south of us is technically owned by France, but they had a much lower tax. So I feel like there could be, I think it's more likely that we see that before we see, because that's a big cost, I think, to companies to obviously move all their stuff over. Yep. So have to wait and see. It's a waiting game. But maybe talking through kind of, sectors and stocks most affected, and then kind of ones that potentially I think are, could be feeling a little bit less pain. And again, it's only short term, so we'll have to wait and see longer. But definitely, I think we talked tech earlier. Mag 7, not looking great. I've seen a lot of people call it Lag 7, which is tough because I feel like it is worse than Lag 7. It's pretty red.
A lot of funny Twitter accounts.
I recommend it. It helps you.
Lag 7. I think that's the first time I've heard that. That's funny.
I feel like that was a CNBC one, so whatever. But I think it works, and it's definitely had a tough year, and this has definitely not helped. I think I'd seen some stats on Apple, especially just because they have so much focus on their manufacturing abroad. Right. And their shares, I think, had been down just under 10%, but let me check again. But I imagine that does not turn around unless we see relief on the manufacturing side. But even if we get it, even if they said just kidding on the tariffs, do you think companies make changes or try to have like sort of backup plans or anything around if something like that does get implemented?
I think companies, sort of do a bunch of things, right? They certainly move their money, their investments where it's most welcomed. I think, they're capitalistic, right? So they're looking for profitability, looking to maximize profitability. So if I can make it cheaper here and sell it for this price here, I'm going to do whatever I can, right? Factor in all the things. Is it really genuinely cheaper to make it there and then ship it all the way here? And then somewhere wrapped in all of that, you certainly want the companies to be the good corporate citizens, right? So just because you can make it cheaper in another country, if that's not the best working environment, you know what I mean, right? Then maybe you shouldn't be making your products there.
I think that's kind of at odds, though, with sort of the efficiency, or not capitalism, but like a true capitalism element, I do think.
Well, but on pure capitalism, sure. But on maybe just what it means to be a good company, right? It's not an unreasonable thing to say all the people who make our products should be paid a reasonable salary and a reasonable wage for wherever they are, right? So if your workers are in New York City, you're going to pay them very different than you might pay a worker in Omaha. Even though it might be the same work, you want to be reflective of that cost of living. And certainly if you're moving your manufacturing overseas, right, just still sort of the same thing, right? Don't outsource it to someone who's going to, screw a bunch of people over. Make sure you are a good steward of those things, right? Because not only do you want to sell a lot of products, make a lot of profit, but you want investors, as well, which again, investors are looking for profit. So
I think there's a mix. Yeah. A mix in terms of incentives. I know, like with Costco, I think there has been some people who have said it's great that they are paying people well. I think they've given people, pay hikes recently. And I think that feels good to support companies that I think are supporting ultimately their community as it kind of reaches out. I do think it's more of I think I'd seen a report where it was talking about psychedelics and talking about why people why they invest in psychedelic companies or the industry. And I think for the US, they did rank sort of like the, not emotional, but sort of the good element of having psychedelic medicine as one of their things, but it was second to returns. Whereas I think in Europe, it was reversed. So that's sort of a broad stroke, but yeah, I do think that's important.
Yeah. And there's, there's plenty of companies with plenty of profit margin who can better, address those issues, right? I think of an Apple, right, comes to mind. Ridiculous cash flow, ridiculous profit margins. I
Mhm.
get it. Your profit margins will be hit if you really focused in on fair wages for everything, and within, at least that they can control within their ecosystem of getting their products built. Um, and a company like Costco that you mentioned says, we're going to do it this way, right? And our workers are here in the US and we want to pay them well. And so what does our profit margin look like? This, but but for between the services they provide and probably the appreciation that people have for the approach that they take with that business, they continue to grow, right? So they're a very successful company and they can do it on a smaller profit margin. And I think because all those things matter to people. I
So
think.
I think so too. I think it's hard to, I think that's true, but it feels like the environment has shifted away slightly from that in some ways. But
Right.
I don't know if that's, if that will stay
Yeah.
that way. Who knows?
Well, we'll see.
Um,
If people are moving stuff to the US and, there's more regulations here, probably depending on what country they're operating in, and wages are certainly different. We'll see how that works out.
yeah, have to wait and see. I think that is definitely the ultimate takeaway is it feels very uncharted. I mean, most things do, I guess. COVID did at the time, but made it through, and I think this did as well. Looking at some other areas that might be impacted, we'll see, or have been kind of impacted so far. Did see on the travel side, airline industry having a little bit more of a struggle, I think in general had looked. And I think recently, just looking at like American Airlines, I think they had taken a bit of a hit. I don't know if part of that is just sort of energy costs, I guess, ultimately, as well as potentially
Some of it
demand
just
just being a little
feels
affected.
well. I remember. I think we even talked about this at one point, where sort of hotels along the border of the United States with Canada, we're seeing lower
Mhm.
whatever rates in terms of people booking
Occupancy.
hotels. So higher vacancy, yeah, or lower occupancy, higher vacancy.
Mhm.
Um, I think there's some of that going on, right?
Mhm.
Some of it could just be, remember how long also after the pandemic it took for sort of business travel to pick up. People were traveling socially or personally, right? Getting back out on a vacation they'd missed for a long time. But business travel was slow. I got to imagine in this environment, right? Bigger businesses, especially global ones that are moving people back and forth, they're like, whoa, there's a lot of uncertainty here. Why don't we
Yeah.
throttle this down for a minute and see where things are going?
I think that's fair. I would have to know more about the airline industry itself to know if like international is where they're
Well,
finding their
so it's
highest
made up of
margins or if it's
planes
domestic.
and then luggage and then people who fly those.
Heard it here first on the AlphaNooner. Educational content always. But no, that's true. But I wish I had more insight into that just because I think that would, because I do think I'd seen sort of lower demand from abroad to the US slightly, just because, again, I think a little bit of uncertainty um, generally. But if we have strong domestic flights still in the mix, who knows, or traveling. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I think that sort of ties in definitely on sort of the recreational or like personal travel. I'm guessing that is probably affected on
Yep.
both goes. Did see, unsurprisingly, consumer discretionary getting hit. I know everyone's talking about Nike and that being a big, big bummer on that side of things. Are you a Nike person? You are
No, I'm
pretty sure.
a hookah person.
Oh, nice. That's like the hip shoe to have, right?
Super comfortable, especially if you're an oversized man like myself.
Uh,
Very comfortable shoes.
into fitness. All right, fair enough. Well, bummer on Nike. I'm curious to see what other ones get affected. I'm obviously guessing, both from a demand perspective, if things get more expensive, but also from production still being tough. On the other side of that, though, definitely had seen more promise on the value retailer side. So that kind of does tie into Costco as well. But definitely had seen companies like, the TJ Maxx and Marshalls of the world. And I guess technically also maybe a continuation on the restaurant side for value. Although I think I had seen a stat where they're saying more people are bringing in bagged lunches for work. Although anecdotally, around our office, I'm definitely seeing people still bring in, stuff from the local Kava, stuff from local Sweet Green.
Right.
But have to wait and see on that side.
And I do think the
Um,
value focus comes from stuff that is here, right? Chili's, Chipotle, we've talked about their value approach to what they're doing. Um, but we've seen Walmart and Amazon get hit, and I would sort of see them value in terms of, you can buy cheaper goods, through those platforms and maybe even a
sure.
Costco, but so much of
Mhm.
that, those cheaper goods come in overseas that they're getting hit.
Mhm.
So those value plays, I think, might struggle a little bit. If you see McDonald's say, "Hey, it's half off burgers and fries while we're going through this hard time," I think could be a good thing for them.
Yep, I think that's true. I guess you're right. The effects might not come into play because I think they have good amount of inventory for at least a little while. But yeah, ultimately, if you do see tariffs on those cheaper goods coming in, that would have an impact. Yeah, being able to produce at home, I guess, makes the difference.
I used to be a New Balance guy.
Really? What
Braindead's
changed?
comments there. I
Oh,
don't
nice.
know. I don't know why I flipped from New Balance. And then I forgot what shoe that I flipped to from there. Like, well, I was more of an Under Armour guy, I think.
I didn't even know they
Then
made
I went
shoes,
through a
sadly.
period where I refused to wear shoes, and then now Hoka's.
Or you do what are the toed shoes? The ones where each
With the
individual toe is there.
toes? Yeah,
Have you
man,
seen
those are
those?
awesome. Yeah, I've seen them.
They're supposed to be good for your feet, I guess.
Man,
Whatever.
make your
Not
feet
good for
feel
your social life.
fantastic.
Yeah,
No,
whatever. That's
not
fine.
if you're still in the dating pool. Get married first, then buy those shoes.
No. Fair enough. All right. What else I think has been interesting? Oh, utilities. I did want to hit on really quickly, just because I feel like that's again, it's sort of that turn towards the things that you can't live without a lot of the times. One stock on that side that I did want to highlight was American Waterworks, which is an interesting one, not dissimilar to the one that you find on monopoly boards, but have had a very strong year, definitely more recently towards the end of the tariff element. But they are up 22%. So I think they had a tougher year in 2024. Generally, utilities had, but interesting. I think that could be an area. Who knows, right?
Yep.
I feel like that could.
You're not going to feel like you want to buy a house now, but with rates seemingly heading down, that is a positive side effect. But I wouldn't say, oh, people are going to rush out and buy houses while we're sort of in this uncertain time frame.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so either. And I guess Powell's speaking today, it sounds like. But I wonder between just the data that we've seen so far, if he is willing to step in. I will tell you what. I would be.
But he's going to keep an eye on inflation, right? Because he can't lower if you're concerned that prices are moving up. And with the retaliatory tariffs, prices would be moving up. So yeah, that part's going to be tricky. And don't forget, if rates do go down, that's not always seen so good for the financial sector. So if you are a sector rotator, that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I would say, how upset do you think?
Pure fundamental speculation. Do with that what you will.
Could prove true, could prove untrue. That is a good,
right.
Yes. I think, again, it's like your tie-in for be careful what you read on the internet. Here on the internet, all that stuff is always good. Take it with a grain of salt.
Especially anything comes from this guy.
No, I think it's fair. But yeah, I think.
Speaking of that,
yes.
You know what we didn't get?
Alive? Oh, what's that? What are you pointing to?
Your like, subscribe, and your crazy icons.
Okay. No, we did at the beginning.
We did?
Well, let me flash them up again if people are forgetting and want to give us I think when I was talking through commenting, liking, there you go. Like, subscribe, share.
Is my finger timed to it? When you see it, does it hit it right when it happens?
Let's try again. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Like, comment, subscribe, share.
Did that work?
Perfect. Pointed in the wrong direction, but timing, perfect.
Well, so that's what from my view, it looks like I'm pointing in the right direction. But is it the opposite when you see it?
I think it's a mirror flip. Let us know out there if you're seeing the same thing. Maybe it's mine. What are you going to do? But good reminder if you're out there. That does help. Love to see. Because I think it's great seeing numbers. I can see 81 people on, which is great. But it's great to see people chatting. People giving a like is always solid.
It helps your cloud score, Mackenzie. Oh, they said you're right too, by the way.
Oh, dang. All right. Well, we'll try it again next time. Practice.
All right. What insightful stuff you have? I'm trying to think of, there's nothing to report in the cannabis space. Have you've talked about Sarah Carter a little bit, right? That's good news or seemingly good news. So, doesn't mean anything yet. It's one of those little, that's nice, heading in the right direction, but not too meaningful yet. We saw the Air announcement, right? So hopefully that's good news, right?
Yep. I think we'll have to reach out and maybe get amongst. I know you were on last time with the previous interim CEO who sounds like they're staying on. Definitely interesting guy.
Bring them both on. That's a good point. Reach out to them.
I will. I think that's a great
chat.
Yeah. So we'll I think reach out and try to get that set up. But
and don't take it easy on them. Give them those hard hitting questions.
Grill. If you guys have hard questions out there, send them over. No, I think yeah, want to get into what they're thinking, strategy. Would love to hear what they think on the Shapiro stuff of him saying time for Pennsylvania to finally turn on for
Let's go.
recreational side
Let's
of things. I know they
go.
have a big footprint there. I am
And for the most
desperate
part,
for
Virginia's
Pennsylvania.
cooked until the next election, right? But
Me
hopefully
too.
that
So
goes
hip.
well.
Cooked?
I mean, it's not going to happen, right?
No, I know. But that's very like hip of you to.
Yeah.
I was just talking about this. We had Margaret Brody on from
I'm a
Rubicon, and she was talking
hipster.
about her kids were saying she's locked in for the year. Like she's like ready to go, ready to grind it out. Yeah, everyone's so hip. All right, whatever. Everyone's getting hip nowadays. Whatever. That's fair. Oh, I do see Braindead's interesting comment, which is fair, which we didn't talk about other things that are doing well,
Mm.
which is
Hmm.
things that people use to cope through hard times, which that's valid. It's hard
Yep.
out
I
there.
was tweeting last
Devices.
night after a few cocktails. Just having a
Cigarette
nice,
between each
relaxing
finger.
evening.
Yeah, that's it. But
Things will be
I would be
fine.
curious.
Things will
Yeah,
be fine.
we'll see. I am curious though if this time around versus I don't think quite in COVID, but maybe around that time, I feel like there was at least a more focus on alcohol. I'd be curious to see if 5 years on there is a bit of a balance more on the cannabis side. Just it's
I
more
think there
accessible and
totally will
everything.
be. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll
totally.
see.
It's hard to still
Yeah.
count the illicit numbers, but yeah, I think so. I think so, and I don't even see anything changing with that transition. So that's the tricky part. As much as you're right, right, the things that people love are still popular in the good times and the bad times. I think, yeah, the of what people love in terms of what they use is
Shifts.
evolving in a good way for some categories like cannabis and like psychedelic. Well, maybe not psychedelics per se, but cannabis. But yeah,
Well, I think we were talking about that yesterday in terms of I don't know. It's
medical
hard to
versus
balance. Like
right adult use, right.
yeah, it's kind of different. And, no, but more also just from like
So for
a
those who are partaking, that's their tool of choice, which is great. I still need
I
to
think
schedule
it's
my ayahuasca ceremony though.
I have seen more and more CEO coverage stories about CEOs
I'm
trying
I'm free and clear to do
various
it now. I,
psychedelics and
I
things like
think
that.
you
So,
knew I was like, man, I need the kids to go to college because what if I go and then do that and then I come back somehow more insane? I was going to say insane, but people would say more insane. Um, I'd rather kids be adults or
yeah,
something, right? It's like, oh, dad's gone crazy. All he
they're
wants to
self
do is
sufficient.
listen to Grateful Dead and sit out in the backyard.
Wear toe
Um,
socks or toe shoes.
So yeah, I think, for a lot of my issues, and I've got a lot of issues. Do we have time for me to cover most of my
I think the show's running a bit long,
all
unfortunately.
right.
No. No, fair enough. I meant more from I think people are under stress. I think a lot of the time when talking about mental health, people talk about like what are external factors versus what are internal. I think,
All right.
treatment's going to, positively impact people differently. But obviously, if people are under stress for valid reasons of the market is having a tough time, that is maybe not the best practical application of
You know how
psychedelics. But
people do, and I say people, like in investment advisors is not the right term. Maybe it's more newsletter where they have
Mhm,
those cruises, right? Come hang out with, and I'll insert a name, Doug Cass, something like that, right?
mhm,
I don't know that he actually does this, so I apologize if he doesn't do this. But they
yeah,
have like those cruises, right? And then that person's on it, and you kind of hang out for a week. I think
mhm,
that person typically gets a free cruise, and or they get a little bit of all the people they can bring onto the cruise ship, and they go have some
mhm,
fun and talk investing or whatever.
mhm.
The advisor shares ayahuasca cruise. You up for that?
That would be something. I think. Yeah. What's the date? Set and sail.
I think it's tomorrow.
Get your tickets if you're out there. Honestly, yeah, that'd be nice. All right, fair enough. We'll see. All right, well then, I feel like coming off of a stressful couple of days, I know less stressful maybe for you. I think again because you're managing things pretty appropriately and viewing it more
I'm watching
as an
our
opportunity
assets
in the
go to
future.
zero. So other than that,
That
things are fantastic.
has been incredibly stressful. Yeah,
Right.
that's been very stressful. Yeah, I
Actually,
was gonna
though,
say, do
and
you
I
have?
know we can't mention tickers, but we've been seeing up until the 2 days ago, some drips into other products, right, that don't get as much coverage on Twitter.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's been nice to see. We've got some good performance. Go check it out on the website. And so we're
Yes.
starting to see some trickles come in. We've been changing some things relative to our marketing distribution approach and trying to grow that a bit more and be a bit wider, right, in terms of the focus and where we're seeing flows. And so was happy to see that. And then, yeah, yesterday and today is just a kick in the face.
That is true. But again, not always. I think the idea of spreading the message out further and further is to get the good ideas, the ideas that are working, and good tools out to people. So again, I think like definitely tough few days. But again, if you're on the short side, not as painful. And again, that's not everyone's approach. I don't want to say that's everyone's approach.
Yeah, and
But
keeping in mind too, yeah, when you're doing that, and I'll speak maybe just again for myself, it's like a 5 or 10 or 15% allocation. There's no way I'm moving like in and out like that. But again,
yeah.
that's what you want to do, right? When you're trying to preserve that capital, that's the drawdowns that if you can stay away from. But for my speculative stuff, I just know it's going to do this, and hold your eyes and keep doing that until your thesis for why you're in it is broken or until you hit
Mhm.
your thesis and then decide what you want to go, from there. But that's a good way to just think about how you manage your money. What's your risky stuff? What's your market exposure stuff? What's the stuff you're trying to protect? And then make your decisions along the way.
Yep. All about planning. I think it makes sense in terms of having a better experience. Let me see really quickly. Any good last final comments as we're going through? Yes, Brain Dead, some strong performance for one of the, I don't know, can I say? Well,
No,
check.
you're going to ruin the whole show.
I'm not going to say it. All right, check out performance. That's very solid.
You won't
In
ruin the
more of
show. You just
those,
got to yank it.
I'm not going to pull it. All right, high quality names. That has also potentially been so far doing well, which has been great. All right, sweet. We got one person on the ayahuasca cruise. Set sail. Got it going. All right,
You
well
said
then,
you were
what else?
going.
Going? Okay, two. We got two. We got two. Keep going. That's up 100%.
Do you think Dan's in?
He's busy, but he could be in. I feel like maybe we need a little
Which
reset.
is a
Who
good
knows?
point. We should, yeah, not while he's managing portfolios, right?
Yeah, he's busy. I think that's fair. All right. Well, then, what's your? It sounds like again coming in with a
It all
level head, so you don't
sucks.
really need.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, there's a balance of that. I think that's fair. Are you
Right.
doing, I don't know, over the weekend, are you doing anything to kind of like reset yourself? I think it is kind of not nice, obviously, but it's if the tariffs had happened on Monday and you're kind of going through a whole week of the market being open and really feeling the pain and kind of spiraling in some ways, do you think it's nice to
Uh,
get a little break between catch your breath and
I'm
reset?
I'm not, right? I mean, and again, you think about sort of the compartmentalizing of where you have money and what's done with it, right? So I get a paycheck, and part of that money is going into a 401k, and so I'm just dollar cost averaging there into it. As I mentioned before, with the cash, I'm doing probably two separate things now. I'm still legging into, the cannabis space
Hmm.
and psychedelics, but more in the cannabis space. Um, but then I've started to leg it more into equities in another sort of pile, and nothing all that meaningful or whatever. But I bought yesterday. Bought I think some in the cannabis space already today. But again, just little amounts. I don't know that today's the exact right day for me to do it. Again, do your own thing, whatever works for you. But I'm gonna. I think I'm gonna just keep doing small amounts and keep being a liquidity provider while people want out,
Hmm.
and hoping that works well for me. And it might not, but we'll see.
All right, that
What
sounds
about
good.
you?
Either way, you have
You
a
sold
plan.
it all, and you're going to the
I
bunker? Is what you told me what
oh,
you were doing?
yeah, exactly. Bearing bolt, yeah, in the backyard. No, nothing that crazy. I think it is similar. I think probably going to dip in a little bit. I think that was helpful during COVID to kind of understand, like we were
It
talking about,
worked
smoking
out
the
well
ghost,
then, right? I mean, in all of these, I think
but I
financial
just,
crisis and COVID had that, Fed, balance sheet and whatever.
yeah.
What I think what's going to do it here is just getting the other side of this crazy news and hopefully it working out. But I do think, I mean, again, don't listen to what I have to say, but in how I'm approaching it, I believe it'll be V, and we'll see.
Okay, we'll see. I will say though, I think looking at COVID, it's very easy with hindsight to say like, of course and again, you can point to the exact reasons why there was a quick rebound and why there was support in there. But I think at the time, if
Mhm.
you remember, it was very uncertain, obviously, of like what would happen, and it not could have gone the other way, but it could have been much worse. Maybe there was no stepping in. Who knows? So I
And
think,
yeah, and look at the data. I think I gathered these data points when I was doing the Bloomberg radio thing, which was I went to the 2016, 2017 tariffs during the Trump administration. What happened? Now, those were a little bit weird because it was sort of China, Mexico, and Canada. And then by the time it turned on, it wasn't China and Mexico, or I'm sorry, it wasn't Canada and Mexico, it was just China. And then that even continued right through the Biden administration. It still exists today. The ones that they're adding now, I heard they're piling on top of that. And yeah, market was volatile. At the time, I think you had a lot of Fed tightening going on, which was also interesting. Actually, that's the other thing to look at. Maybe I'll post this on Twitter. But look at the Fed balance sheet over the last 6 months, 9 months. It's actually gone down, which I think actually sucks also liquidity out of the marketplace. So yeah, let's see what levers they turn over the next days, weeks, months ahead. But put me in the V camp.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we'll have to wait till we hear Powell's comments, I think, later today. That'll hopefully give us a little more clarity in terms of where things are going. But yeah, very interesting. Also, yes, I think that's all good. Easy to look at it with hindsight. I think that, paying off your car is still great. So I think that's solid. All right. Well, that is a good thing. Be free and clear.
That's the first place to start. I mean, kind of car loans, a house loan, at least with a house loan, you can deduct it. Well, the whole deducting car loan thing on US made cars is interesting. And car loans, I know, are usually less, especially versus something like credit cards. But yeah, get the debt paid off first, because those are killers. And then go from there.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. Look at this. It's such a good, healthy sort of, yeah, there you go, friend. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Really, really appreciate it. Hope you're hanging in there on Friday. Again, I know it is tough out there, but again, I think
thanks, Brain Dead, for the engagement too. That's awesome. And thanks for everybody for tuning in. Stevie went quiet. He must have had to run out and get some lunch. But yeah, everyone that supports us and takes the time to watch this, thank you. We appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. Yep, that sounds good. And then join us definitely next week. Take a look at the event center on AdvisorShares.com if you want to see what is coming up next. And or if you follow us on social, we'll post it there too. So you'll see the whole schedule coming up. But definitely feel free to join us and bring your questions. And also, it's hard for me to do both.
Oh wait, that's how I was holding my finger up. But that's a good point. I was holding my finger up actually for one thing. Actually, relates to Brain Dead, because I said mean things about anonymous Twitter accounts the other day. And to be clear, I meant that for anonymous accounts who then post wildly speculative stuff, even positive or negative, right? Like, know what their incentives are. Knowing what their incentives are will help, right? As I saw a little craziness around Grown Rogue, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I do know the past news, but to just elevate it so aggressively, something smelled off there, right? So that was my only comment about anonymous accounts, by the way, is just to be careful when you see that kind of stuff. You want to be anonymous on Twitter? Totally fine with that. It's just when they're doing it in that way, as if they think they know something and they're trying to create either too much excitement for something or too much fear for something. Just be cautious of those things. But the Brain Deads of the world, whose real name I don't think I know, I'm all good.
That sounds good. All right, good clearing up. Thanks, everyone, again. Really appreciate it. And check in on Monday. Thanks so much.
Bye, everybody.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at AdvisorShares.com.